Hey everyone, how's it going? Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Muck. I am poker professional Ryan LaPlante, and joining me as always are my two co-hosts, Reuben Bresler, the poker reporter, and AJ Sacher, the poker superfan. How's it going, guys? Nice to see you.
Not bad,
Good
not
to be
bad.
back.
How you doing?
Good. Yeah, I feel the same way. I felt as well our last episode was a little rough around the edges for various
happen.
reasons, mostly because of me. But, we're
It is
getting
what it
better.
is.
We're
It
getting
is what it
better
is.
a little bit, slowly, step by
No
step.
pilot is the best episode of any show.
This is true. Although that was our second pilot. The first pilot was slightly rougher.
We'll never see the light of day.
Yeah, true. It won't see the light of day again. The one viewing of that was more than enough for me. Anyways, there's been some really interesting news this week. Pokerstars and PartyPoker, but mostly Pokerstars has really thrown out the gauntlet over the last week. What's been going on, Reuben?
So here's the big news in the poker world this week. PokerStars was given approval by the New Jersey Board of Casino Regulators, I guess, last week, just after we finished recording our show, which is a little awkward because our show aired and then all this huge news came out, that they can eventually operate in the state of New Jersey. And so that's kind of a huge deal for the first time in, 4.5 years since Black Friday?
Yep.
PokerStars will be making its return to the United States. Well, not just PokerStars. Amaya Gaming Group, which owns PokerStars as well as Full Tilt, was given approval in New Jersey for business activity, which means not just poker, but also other slots and other types of casino games.
Well, New Jersey's had poker for a while now, but this means that New Jersey will be able to play against people that are not in New Jersey.
No,
that's
actually not true. Nope, they're only going to be playing against people in New Jersey.
Right, they're still only, it's still just like
really
888 can only play within New Jersey, whereas 888 and the World Series of Poker can link Nevada and Delaware, whatever. Those two states can play together, but New Jersey can't. So it can't interact with the rest of the world. But this is like a slightly ajar door.
Right,
is what's
yes.
happening.
Which is why it's a big deal. It's not a big deal because, New Jersey only has $2 million $2 million per month right now in poker revenue.
The online poker revenue from last year was 16 million, just above 16 million, whereas in 2014, or from this year, it's 16 million, which is down from about 21 million.
Oh, so it's even dropping down below that.
It's dropping, but the gambling revenue is rising.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what I had seen.
It's almost 87 million in online gambling revenue in Jersey, which is up from 83, 84-ish in 2014, which is a slight, it's similar percentages, but it's interesting that those people are moving over to non-poker.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that it's not outside of New Jersey is a huge barrier, and probably one that California is going to have to take the lead on because they've been the ones taking the lead on these things. And Wisconsin got shot down recently and all of those things. But basically, all that really would need to change is the tax structure on poker would have to change slightly, and peer-to-peer poker would be a real thing that PokerStars could bring back to the United States. We could get some of these... Yeah, we could get some folks like you back in the United States paying American taxes, which is a huge deal for the United States and for New Jersey specifically. PokerStars is not content with where they are. They're happy with this victory, but they're already in California, Pennsylvania, New York, trying to do all this stuff. So, this is huge news, but this is huge news that is a preamble.
Yeah, it's huge potential news.
Right. Yeah. It of itself doesn't matter that much, but what it can lead to is incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. And the fact that, this is the biggest news of the week in a week in which, the W Coop wrapped up, Poker Central launched, WSOP Europe starts this week. We didn't even touch on Vanessa Russo getting third in Big Brother. Which is kind of poker news.
Poker.
These are all big news things that are happening. In poker, and this is just by far and away bigger than all of them combined.
Right, agreed.
Because this is potentially enormous for the online poker industry.
Definitely. Poker Central launching was kind of met with a loud meh.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that, like, they weren't on an actual, like, you know, TV station or anything like that, that they're just online, and that they're online on, like, Xbox and, like, Roku and, like, some kind of website thing that I haven't really looked at yet. And, like, everyone's kind of like, well, what content do they have? Oh, they're just playing reruns of High Stakes Poker and Poker After Dark, which everyone has seen a trillion times or doesn't care about. And sure,
and it's all, like, on YouTube anyway.
Yeah. And then they're also doing things like, sure, they're doing a couple new shows, which is great when they launch. And, like, just, like, I haven't really spoken to anyone who thinks that it's that big of a deal. It's cool what Negreanu's trying to do with it. Right, definitely.
Right. Now, when they signed the Muck, featuring Reuben Bresler, AJ Sacher, and Ryan LaPlante, that'll be big news.
That'll be huge. In fact, hey, they follow us on Twitter now.
Do they really?
Yes, they do.
Wow.
They were one of our first followers. Yeah.
That's step one.
We're making splashes in the world.
Only about 85 steps to go. But I want to put, just before I complete my thought on this, Pokerstars being approved in New Jersey is in itself a very tiny deal.
Right.
But we're leading the show with it for a reason beyond the fact that, you know, in New Jersey, there's only about 150, maybe 200 7-day average players, right? So there's not a ton of players happening in New Jersey already on World Series of Poker 888 sites. So even if Pokerstars takes all of them away, that's still not a big customer base. This is not a big news story yet, but what it is a concrete sign that
progress is being made in the U.S.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, like, the other thing is that Pokerstars has so much more money to make off of it than WSOP.com and, you know, Party and 888 can.
Sure.
And because of that, they're going to be willing to punt so much more money into it because of that.
Well, Amaya has so much more money than any of these other sites. Amaya is just pumping money into fantasy sports, as we've seen, as we've talked about a little bit.
They were really involved in the PPC, like lobbying and everything as well.
Yes. Poker, the PPA, Poker Players Alliance.
PPA,
yeah. Sorry. PPA. Yep. Definitely, yes. So it's great to see them in the market because of those things. It means that they'll be willing to put some skin in the game to a much bigger degree than they already have been. Than the fact that they're already here, they'll be taken a lot more seriously by other states as well, which is just great.
Yep.
So speaking of Pokerstars news, they've been making some interesting third-party software changes.
Yeah. Third-party software has been somewhat contentious in the past, but we've finally seen steps to kind of squash it out. We're seeing a great decrease in availability of it. The hand history is not being able to be downloaded locally.
That's on PartyPoker.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're correct.
Yeah, on PartyPoker, you can't download hand histories at all anymore, which means that you can't use a heads-up display at all on PartyPoker anymore.
None of your information is held locally from that. Although I imagine that is just steps away from workarounds, but...
Yeah, exactly.
The other things that they're doing are like making table selection way harder to do, if not impossible. By making you choose like the level you want to play at, and you enter a waiting list for that game.
Yeah, that's what.
And then are entered into a table based on availability, rather than choosing a table by knowing the players.
Yeah. Full Tilt did that as well, I think.
Yeah, and in fact, they won't even show you who you're seated with once you're seated until you're dealt a hand, which means you gotta pay a blind to see the numbers and then can try again. I guess.
This is weird that they're sort of, well, first of all, I would assume that nearly 100% of the regulars don't want this to happen. Is that right?
The PartyPoker stuff, definitely. Nobody wants either of those things to occur. Although,
and they know that. I mean, they're doing it on purpose.
So what's the end game? What are they trying to achieve?
The way that Party sees it is that they're already a kind of a specialty site anyways. Like regs, like I personally, like even before this stuff, I don't think I've played a single tournament since I've been here in Canada on Party Poker. Not one. Literally not a single hand played. And it's because of like their quality of software, the quality of the games they have to offer, a couple other things. It's just, it's not worth getting money onto there and dealing with the hassle of playing there. And
for hardcore players.
Right, for hardcore players. And they realize that they don't really appeal to hardcore players. So their target audience are recreational fun players. And recreational fun players do not care about HUDs. They do not care about table selection. They don't
care about it in that they don't want other people to have
right,
it.
exactly. So that's what Party Poker is doing, is that they're stopping game selection and they're stopping HUD use. So then the few regs who do play now on Party Poker have less of an edge on the recreational players. So Party Poker can like rake the money more and more and more, since there aren't people with ridiculous win rates existing anymore. Essentially, that's like their plan with it, is that while they might see a drop in like overall volume, they'll see an increase in total rake made because of where the money goes on the site.
Interesting.
So let me ask you this: if so they must have stats on this, which this is the part that confuses me. This is clearly a move to get more, let's say, casual online poker fans and players to play on their site.
All right.
If they're casual, are they even paying attention to this?
Well, so what they're doing, they're not doing it to get more to play on their site. They're doing it so the regs who do play on their site don't take the recreational players' money as quickly. So then that money can be raked more. It has nothing to do with getting more players on. It has more to do with protecting the players who are already on there.
Balancing the economy a little.
Yeah, essentially.
Sure. Was their economy in danger? Was this like a thing where everyone knew that this site was just run by the sharks and no one else made any money?
No, it's more just that the site has never really grown that much because of, honestly, in my opinion and in pretty much everyone's opinion who I've ever spoken to about Party itself, is that they've just never been a very well-ran company. They've never really put their money into their resources very intelligently. Like, the fact that their software over the last 6 years has, like, been the exact same and hasn't improved says a lot about the company. The fact that their support has always been pretty marginal, that, you know, just everything about Party has been like the same, and they haven't really adapted. So because they haven't really adapted, they've just like they've slowly lost market share to Pokerstars. And Pokerstars over those years kept getting better and better and better until Maya happened. Then it's kind of, and like, you know, some other like tax things and, you know, segregation of sites. And, you know, so Stars, well, they took some dips. They're still doing a lot better compared to everyone else that existed. So Stars just keeps eating away at Party Poker. So what Party Poker needs to do, or at least they feel they need to do, is that they need to protect the players that they have. And the players that they have are recreational players, and the people who are taking their money are the professionals. So if they make their site, if they make their site undesirable to players such as myself, they are now going to be able to rake more money off of their recreational players because of that.
Interesting.
Sure.
Okay.
Because they're not losing anything. They're not losing anything and dissuading you from playing because you're not playing anyway.
But what they don't realize is that dissuading regs from playing is actually kind of a bad thing, because most of the regs that play aren't very good and don't have very high win rates anyways. So because of that,
that's why they're playing on their site.
And a lot of those regs anyways play a ton of hands. They play many more hands relative to those recreational players. So if they get a lot of like near break-even regs to stop playing on their site, those near break-even reg. So let's say they win at like, you know, 1 or 2 big blinds per every 100 hands that they play. That reg will make Party Poker a lot more money than 20 recreational players, because that reg is going to play like 50x the hands. And while that reg is making money off of recreational players, they're also paying tons more in rate compared to those recreational players. And as you lose a lot of those guys, your site overall will take a decent dip in total volume, because those guys are to some degree the game starters. Or if they aren't the game starters, they keep the games running.
They're the game perpetuators.
Right. Yeah, they're the game perpetuators. They might not start games. Recreational players will start games, regs will join those games, and the regs will keep the games going as more like weaker regs or recreational players join those games. So Party needs to kind of like walk that thin line of making sure that they don't alienate regs too much, or they'll just continue to lose market share at an even greater rate than what they have been. So they're trying to find like that balance of dissuading regs from playing, but not making their site unplayable.
Right. It's an interesting move.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they, you know, you go like, well, look how successful Bovada's been.
Yeah.
And then, like, that doesn't seem like a thing that happened. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a sentence that anyone said.
It's not. Yeah, that's not the model to.
Although actually,
want to
wait. Actually, in parties sense, it actually might be, because honestly, I think Bovada's schedule is better than Party's schedule. Honestly, for tournaments, and like the cash games running on there are probably better and run more. Honestly, I would say that like Party probably does want to emulate Bovada, honestly, and that's kind of what they're doing. Like Bovada, you can have a max of 4 cash game tables. You can have a HUD, but it's a royal pain to get. You have to like do some major workarounds to get a HUD working. The anonymous names and all those kinds of things. Which site? I think there's a site that also started to allow like name changes and stuff too. Like a lot more sites, a lot of the smaller sites are trying to dissuade regs from like playing, or if not to dissuade them, to lower their edges. In fact, like the Pokerstars software changes. The Pokerstars software, their third-party software changes were a couple different things. AJ, did you see exactly what they were? I remember some of them.
Well, they already had the global waiting list for specific games, but there were workarounds with third-party software, and those are no longer allowed. And it looks like they've just simplified and banned the more complex and dynamic third-party software from operating on the site. Is that? That's my understanding of it.
So one of the software that I'm aware that they banned specifically is called SpinWiz. It's for their spin and goes. That's one of their games in which you would just enter, like you just say, hey, I want to play $7 spin and go. Then it would just put you into a pool of people who want to play $7 spin and goes, and then you would just play one. You wouldn't get to like table select it or anything. So what SpinWiz would do is, if you're running that software and someone else is running that software, it won't put you into the same game together. So it's a way of avoiding regs using that software, which doesn't really matter for like 7s and 15s because almost nobody uses it. But for 30s, 60s, and 100s is a pretty big deal because of the 5% rake in those games. You know, they're 3-person hyper turbos that are winner take all, and you generally only get 2x the buy-in back. And when it has like 3-minute levels and a bad structure, it's really hard to have an edge on anyone, much less, you know, having another good regular in the game. So what Stars is actually going to see happening is that the 30s, 60s, and 100s traffic is slowly going to drop and drop and drop until a lot of regs realize that they can't beat the games anymore, and then they'll kind of continue to exist, but it'll be mostly recreationals playing them because of that. 15s and 30s will stay beatable, and their traffic will stay probably about the same or similar, but regs not being able to use that software is kind of a bad thing. Which, the thing is that I'm not really against them banning seat scripting software or even that software in general. What I'm against is the fact that they have the rake at 5% and that it's unbeatable without using software like that.
It's kind of a systemic problem.
Right, it's a systemic problem of the game that they created. They essentially created a casino game and called it poker, and then regs were like, well, hey, if we don't play the regs, we can make money at it, or if we play low enough stakes, we can just beat the super recreational players. But now without that, the games will kind of die at the 30s or at the 60s and 100s level for the most part over the next like 3 to 6 months. You'll see a lot of regulars leave it, but a lot of recreational players will still play it because they don't care about losing money in those games.
Right.
The other stuff that they changed was something that I thought was weird and a couple other people think is weird is they stopped allowing equity calculators, which is like a program like PokerStove. PokerStove, what it does, and I can't really show it on screen here or anything, but what it does is you can put in a hand and put in a range of hands. So let's say you put in ace king and you want your opponent to have like jacks plus ace king, ace queen suited, which is a pretty typical like strong range. You go, okay, how much equity does ace king have? You put it into PokerStove, you put that in, you run the numbers, and it'll tell you brute force simulates, and you have 43% equity in that scenario. I can no longer have that program open at all while PokerStars is up and running at all. And they stopped all programs similar to that, which is kind of weird because it's not something that it's not something that people really use very often, and it's not something that's really a useful tool. So I'm very surprised that they banned it.
For like experienced players, a lot of that is so second nature anyway.
Yeah,
right. I was going to say that's a lot. People have that. First of all, people have it mentally in their head, and second of all, you can just have that exact program on another laptop.
On your laptop,
on another laptop, right. So
that's a weird one.
Right, that's a really weird one.
If you're curious about PokerStove, by the way, Ryan uses it all the time on his stream, so you should just watch one of the streams, and then you can see what PokerStove
I'm always like curious or suspicious or whatever the word is about creating unenforceable rules in any situation. It's so counterproductive. Like, you're not actually forcing people not to use it. You're just forcing people to take an extra step to use it.
Right. Which,
sure.
I mean, I personally, I don't really see myself ever really using it because I don't have, like, an extra, desktop
Well, you
here.
also don't need to. Like,
no, I don't need it, but there are times in which I like using it just because, like, let's say there's a decision that's, like, within 3%. Sure. I'm going to want to use Stove to make sure if I, like, have it correct to that 3%.
And specifically for Ryan, it makes sense because he can visualize it on his screen rather than just doing it in his head.
Right.
The other thing that this does is if you add another step of difficulty to one website, there are enough poker websites where everyone who's like, well, rather than go through 3 steps, I would rather just use this other website and use 2 steps.
Right.
So the poker player is coming out on top because they don't have to avoid the rule, and the poker website's coming on top because they don't have to deal with this player that is using these odds that they don't want to use anymore.
They also don't get the business of that player.
Right.
It's a plus and minus. You take the strikes and you take the gutters. You got to decide whether you want the player's money or you want the player's problems. So they've decided that they would rather have both be gone rather than have both.
Well, do you think that was a conscious decision, or do you think
probably not? But
I don't know why they really banned specifically that.
It seems like an unforeseen ramification more than a conscious decision.
Right.
From the outside, at least.
The other things that they banned, which were like kind of be somewhat expected, was there's a lot of controversy a little while ago about someone called Skier5 using this dynamic like push shove fold charts.
Is this the heads up bot?
Yeah, but the spin and go bot. Heads up bot, right. So like PokerStars started to really look into that software and look like what it did exactly. So then they they banned that software specifically, and then they'd been like apparently looking into banning certain aspects of like dynamic HUDs anyways, but that like gave them the boost to really start pushing this stuff out.
That pushed it over the edge.
That pushed it over the edge for them. So now what they're doing with some HUDs is that they're banning like automatic note takers. So like something like Note Caddy is just completely banned now. Certain aspects of like PT4 are technically banned now. Apparently for whatever reason, which to me this is just really weird, but like in heads-up displays, you can now only have 3 colors. You can't have more than 3 colors, which is just like...
Sure, man.
As somebody that's borderline colorblind, all right.
I don't understand it at all.
Everything anyway.
But the main thing that they banned in HUDs were dynamic like changes in the HUD.
Right.
Like the HUD can't just like tell you to do certain things, which I'm perfectly fine with.
That's a very natural thing. As AI gets stronger and stronger, and we've all heard about, the heads-up limit bot now just breaking heads-up limit. As the AI technology gets better and better, you don't want to be in a situation where somebody can run a bot and go party and come back to a win rate. Like that's not something that anybody wants.
Right.
The sites, the players, anybody. So any steps like against that you would think would be proactive. I mean, this is a little reactive, but it's still it's understandable, right? Like
some of what they're doing is definitely understandable, but I think some of what they're doing is also they're like step by step making minor changes to these things where eventually, like I would expect within the next 3 years that heads-up displays are completely banned on PokerStars.
But the technology moves so much faster than the letter of the law.
Agreed.
There will always be workarounds.
In everything.
I mean, there will probably always be workarounds, but I don't.
There's only so much you can do. I mean, at a certain point, I don't know.
it's going to hurt a lot. Like, it's going to hurt a lot of professionals, and like that's their plan with it. Is that like, okay, so let's say I just didn't play with my HUD at all. It's not going to make me into not a winning player. It's just it's probably going to lower my. I would estimate that it would lower my edge. Like 5 to 10% ROI.
Your edge is a little smaller, and you can probably handle like 2 less tables.
5 to 10% is a high number.
Yeah, maybe
it's huge.
Maybe even higher in
I think volume
but
is what's actually being
due
hit.
to my like especially in some of my lower stakes games, it would definitely hurt my edge a decent amount more because so what most professionals use their HUD for is like it can be used multiple different ways, but the main way that I use it personally for tournaments is that I get stats on weak recreational players, and I figure out what kind of weak recreational player they are without having to pay attention.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've seen that happen, especially
if they're like hyper aggro or overly nit or like loose passive. Like those three are like the main three like type of recreational player. Me being able to see exactly what type of recreational player they are without having to pay attention to the table, like that drastically increases my win rate, but only in the weakest games. So in the super soft games, you know, it's probably going to show like a 5 to 15% ROI difference. Sure, like those games already have like a 50 or 60% ROI in, so like it's not going to like drastically like deduct from my win rate in those games, and it probably won't really even affect my win rate in the mid to high stakes games because if I wasn't using a HUD, I would just drop a lot of my low stakes tables and focus on my mid to high stakes games. So
that's what my argument would be. That what's being hit here is volume a lot more than because so much less of the process is being automated.
Yep, like I would like without a HUD, honestly, I would say like optimally for me, I'd probably instead of going from playing like 12 to 18 tables, I would go from playing like 8 to 10 tables.
Right.
So, speaking of other websites going on, America's Card Room ran their $1 Million Guaranteed again on Sunday.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Another one happened, and there was some overlay, as we predicted.
And as we expected, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And at the same time, with all this promotion of this tournament series that they're doing, they also launched a Mac client, which I know quite a few Apple users were pretty happy about because it's a hassle running an emulator to have to play these tournaments, and they all want to play these tournaments. So that's, I don't know, it's a good move with good timing.
Definitely.
Yeah. Snow Leopard is not an easy program to use.
It's a hassle.
I'm sure it is. Apparently didn't really help them that much, though. Another 200K overlay. That's pretty...
Yeah,
pretty drastic.
Another $200,000 overlay is adorable.
Yeah, you could blame the first one on DDoSing. This one,
not so much.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know either. Like everyone I knew kind of knew about it, so it's just I don't know why it overlaid by that much either. I had fun with it though.
Hey viewers, if you like overlays, there's 3 more to go.
There you go.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, you made a deep run in this one.
Yeah, I took 39th in it for like $2,600, you know, which was okay. Sigh.
Not too bad. Not
too
bad.
When 200K is up top and you get 2K, it's just like
it stings a little.
Fine.
It stings a little.
You know, you're not that happy about it.
Right.
I'm happy about it, but I'm not that happy about it.
Well, that's not bad for, you know, however many hours of work.
Yeah,
and
this is
you
true.
have 3 more chances.
I know. Right? That's what I'm actually excited about.
In fact, Sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of other people making deep runs,
That's what I was going to say.
Rupert Adler.
You're not the only show host to have made a 4-digit score.
Oh, he was talking about Rupert Adler.
Although I was also talking about Reuben Bresler.
I wanted to throw it to Reuben.
Yeah, let's go to Reuben. Screw Rupert. Reuben. Reuben
has enough accolades.
I played in a slightly smaller tournament and got a slightly higher finish for about the exact same number. I got 6th for like 2,200 in the PPC that was at the Binions.
That we discussed last week.
We discussed last week. I said that the PPC at Binions was happening and that you all should play. And then when this episode aired, I was already playing in day 2, so you guys couldn't play. But I did, and I ended up getting 6th for 22-something, almost 23.
That's great.
Which was all right. I didn't hate it.
Was that tournament overlaid?
That tournament was overlaid. They needed about 165
to clear?
To not be over, and they got about 130.
Okay.
So they didn't They missed by
Not too bad.
a bit, but not. I mean, it was a $300 tournament with 3 buys. It was not a terrible overlay. And of course, this one was backed by PPC, the Poker Players Championship, which is having the championship at the beginning of November.
So the guarantee held up.
UBA, the guarantee held up.
Yes.
You cannot say about all Binion's tournaments. But I will mention that a lot of people didn't play in this tournament because they heard that it was at the Binion's and assumed the overlay would be reneged. So this is the thing that happens.
If only there was a show where they talked about these types of things and you could figure it out from...
I wonder.
Interesting.
If only that existed. I guess we'll just have to wait for something
aired on the Poker channel. But yeah, I was happy with my finish.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, that's a very nice run.
Not bad.
Adding to that Hendon mob.
Yeah, man. Got 2 results on it now.
Woohoo!
Build that profile.
Build it. Yep. All good. I'm usually reporting is the thing. Like, I'm usually watching people make money.
Right.
It's nice to make some money for yourself then.
Yeah.
So, a few days before we started shooting this, I did a first for me as well, which was my first ever interview for the Muck. Nice. Our first guest is one of the best known voices of the poker community, Mr. Adam Schwartz from the 2+2 Pokercast. So, let's look at that now. Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Heads Up with Ryan LaPlante. Today, our first guest is a voice that everyone will know and recognize, and a face some of you will know and recognize, Mr. Adam Schwartz. Hey, Adam, how's it going? Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I'm quite flattered that you selected me to be your first guest. I don't know about your decision-making ability, but hey, why not?
I mean, I think that, so, like, the point of me wanting to do these kind of interviews and the show, the rest of my other co-hosts wanting to do these kinds of interviews, is that we don't just want to have like poker players on. We want to have people who are in the industry behind the scenes and get a different viewpoint of the poker industry out there that not many people know or really recognize. So a lot of people that that we listen to or that we read about or so on and so forth, will just be like their business side of things, which is, they'll just be writing and saying, what they're supposed to do or kind of view, and you don't really get to know the person behind it or their actual honest thoughts and opinions about things. So by doing these kind of interviews, we get to have a much more varied look into the industry and also a somewhat unique and new look into the industry as well. So
poker, like interviewing people is really kind of, you'll find as you go, difficult, especially when you're sort of having, it's difficult to have the same interview over and over and over again.
Definitely.
If you have a poker player, there's only so many questions you really can ask about poker, and you don't want to just ask everybody the same question, right? And so you're right, and it's interesting. You can go find people in the industry that have really cool viewpoints on a lot of things that maybe people they've never heard of before. Last week we had Randy Bloomer on our show, for instance, and he was the founder of the very first internet poker site.
I listened to that. That was a wonderful interview, by the way.
Yeah, Planet Poker back in the day. He's really neat, right? So that kind of stuff is fun. That's where it becomes fun, right?
Right, definitely. So yeah, we thought about doing this kind of thing that we could do some really fun and interesting and unique interviews, and it's good to hear that you have that same kind of approach too to things.
Yeah, well, after you do it for a few years, you really kind of seek that out because it's part of doing the show, it's for fun, right?
Definitely.
You're doing it for yourself to have fun with it, and hopefully people enjoy it. And then at some point you sort of run out of people that play poker that you think might be interesting, so you go ahead and try and find other people, right?
Yep, definitely. So before doing the 2+2 podcast, you were a professional grinder yourself, weren't you?
Was, yeah. I started playing poker in 1995 for a living.
Wow, that's
20 years ago.
You're like an old school dinosaur.
Totally, yeah. I am a dinosaur. It's funny. I get a kick out of seeing like 28-year-olds saying they're over the hill, and I'm thinking, wow. But I had a job in a little town here in BC called Nanaimo. And I didn't like being in the town, came back over here, started playing for fun. And next thing you know, it's 20 years later kind of thing. But even though lots of different things along the way, I started playing, limit hold'em, because that was the main game at the time in the 90s. And there was a game here in Vancouver that's pretty funny, actually, because there was 6 or 7 tables in this room. It was called the Holiday Inn on Broadway. It was a 10-20 limit hold'em game they had, and it was 6 or 7, like I said, 6 or 7 tables. Greg Mueller started in that game.
Wow.
John Kim, who I'm not sure if a lot of people know, but he's Nicolak on FTP. He dominated the 5-10 no limit for years. And Terrence Chan started in that game.
Wow.
Some others as well. So
it's like a melting pot of professional grinders started there.
Yeah, it was sort of this sort of fun time in poker for a couple of years, where we all sort of showed up and played poker and had fun.
Do you play much now?
I do. Yeah, I play. I don't play near as much as I used to. So after the game at the Holiday Inn, I traveled down to L.A. because that was the place where everybody was going to play poker.
Of course.
It's the center of the universe. You'd heard stories about these places, and having no idea about what I was doing at the time, I jumped in my I had this old minivan, and a buddy of mine who wanted to come with me. I said, let's go to LA, right? And what could go wrong? So I think I had $1,900 to go down and start playing 1530 limit hold'em. Wow. And we stopped in Seattle. There was a game in Seattle, and I remember losing like 700. So I had 1,200. I could drive home in 3 hours, or I could drive to LA, which is the natural thing to do. So I drove to LA with like $1,100, and we started playing at the Hollywood Park. There's a casino near LAX called Hollywood Park that had 1530 limit hold'em at the time, and the games were fantastic. Just it was the sort of the heyday, right? Yep. Of limit hold'em, and luckily enough, I ran good for that. Like I had all my money on the table, and ran good, and I ended up staying. There's a hotel they had a deal with, the Crown Plaza LAX. I was in there for 6 months, I think. Wow. Stayed there and played, and there were tons of met all kinds of amazing people in poker, and had a great time. Came back, and I started playing online poker sort of at the beginning. Right at Planet Poker, the guy we talked to last week, I had an account on there. We started playing the next site, the big one to come along. I mean, there was little ones like Doyle's Room, and I think it was called something else, Highland Poker, I believe. Yeah,
something like that.
And then I started playing on Paradise, and that's really where sort of I started making a lot of money, doing quite well in the big game in Paradise. Was 10-20 limit hold'em at the time. You could play 4 screens, and it was like, crazy. And the games were fantastic. Then Party Poker came along, and a friend of mine, Mike O'Malley, offered me a job as a prop there. And I think there was 4 tables of poker at the time at Party, and I said, sure. So I started playing, and next thing you know, that site just went crazy with all the marketing they did with Mike Sexton.
Yep. Party really took the world by storm back then, and then they became that super powerhouse up until the whole DOJ and the $300 million fines, and then leaving the U.S.
Right. There was a real heyday at Party from, I want to say it was like 2005, 2006, where you could play, it was the boom. Chris Moneymaker had happened. The internet poker had exploded all over the world, and people were playing. And I remember playing at Party, and the 1530 was the biggest game at the time, and you could play 4 tables. And there was 40 or 50 1530 limit hold'em tables. Wow. And then they introduced 3060, and you could play, I think, a couple at a time, and it was insane. It was like a bank machine, like turning on the computer every day. I remember my wife saying to me one night, when you need to go for groceries, you need to go and get some groceries, when she was pregnant or whatever. And I said, well, yeah, I could go out for groceries, but it's probably going to cost us $400 or $500 for me to take off for 2 hours to get groceries. So,
Jesus, that's just ridiculous.
But it's not probably a great idea, and it was weird because you just kind of, you knew that it wouldn't last.
Right.
It was this amazing era, and you knew you should play as much as pin your eyes with toothpicks, but you never felt that you played enough. And I didn't make the switch to No Limit Hold'em that so many did at the time, which was a big mistake on my part. I stuck with No Limit Hold'em. I was doing quite well. Why would I learn a new game? But of course, No Limit Hold'em exploded online.
It incredibly exploded.
Yeah, and they were just, the win rates were insane at the time. I had a friend of mine here in Vancouver who was making $100,000 every month playing in the
Jesus, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was nuts. And I was kind of kicking myself a little bit there. So, sorry, I know you asked me a different question, but I just wanted to give you background.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I like this kind of stuff, understanding where your viewpoint is and has changed over the years. So getting an insight into this is great.
So, how much do I play? In the years I switched to Omaha high-low split, which was my specialty. I played millions of hands of that online.
Oh wow! I didn't know you played it that much.
Yeah. I really specialized that for probably 4 or 5 years, and then PLO. Now I play mostly PLO and Omaha high-low split when I play. Great.
Cool, that's great. I too am an 08 player, but I'm more of a PL08 and NL08 tournament player. So nice to know that you two are an 08 guy.
I never jumped into PL08.
No? It's so good, so good.
Because I wasn't 100% confident that my Omaha high-low split skills would,
translate well.
Like I think it's easy to say, well, it's just kind of Omaha high-low split, but it's not. There's a lot of differences to it, and so I never really spent a lot of time in the game much. Again, I probably should have.
Makes sense. Understandable. I mean, especially when you start something so long ago and the industry changes so quickly, it definitely can be hard to keep up unless you know that it's changing and that's your goal. Which back then, a lot of you more old school regs didn't really know that it was going to change, that things were going to, change the way that they have. Someone such as myself has had a huge advantage over you where, when I started playing in the industry, everything was already changing so quickly, and I knew that going into it that I had to keep studying, keep getting better, and also, No Limit Hold'em has stayed the main game for so many years that I haven't really had much need really to evolve and to play other games, but just out of desire, I've kind of forced myself to, and has definitely been very profitable for me to do so. So it's definitely understandable that you mostly stayed to those games and then haven't really changed that much outside of switching, just here and there a little bit to No Limit Hold'em and PLO.
The lesson is don't get comfortable ever in poker. When you're playing for a living, don't ever get comfortable because the game is going to change. It has to change. Reasons why it's changing from No Limit Hold'em is because the best players get the money so fast. Switch to PLO, switch to mixed games. So be on top of it. Be on top of all the games that are evolving. I know there's a million of them, Badoogie, Badacy, and all the different split games and stuff that you play. But do your best if you're a player out there to really evolve all the time.
So when exactly did you start the Rounders the poker show, and how did that come into existence?
So it's an interesting story. In 2004 here in Canada, I know this is bizarre that this is how it started, but there was an NHL hockey strike in Canada. Well, in the NHL, but in Canada, they had to replace all that content. I mean, there was you got to understand how much hockey is on TV up here. And this is back in, before all the different streaming and all the different things that happen now. I mean, you watch TV. That's how you consume most of your media. So they had to replace all that content. They had hours and hours and hours and hours to fill. Well, they filled it with poker because we were sort of at the start of this poker boom, and they just piled poker on TV. So if you turned on TSN, which is our ESPN, it's the same thing here, you saw poker for a large majority of the day. And it boomed. It was taking off. And my buddy Mike Johnson, who I used to do the show with, he's a professional broadcaster, and he was doing an NHL show on the radio here on the local sports radio station here in Vancouver, and it was NHL Game Day. So on Saturdays is the big day for hockey up here. We have Hockey Night Canada, and the whole schedule is always full of hockey games. So on the radio in the morning, he would do a 3-hour show by himself about previewing all the games and talking about the different teams, everything going on in the hockey world. So that show's going away, and we were out one night, and I said, hey, why don't you pitch a poker show? We can talk about poker on the radio to the people at the sports radio station. And he said, yeah, that's a good idea. He was just getting into poker at the time. He knew I played a lot, and he pitched it to the station manager. And they said, well, we've got the slot Sunday at 11 p.m. or something like that. We'll throw you on there. How about try that? And Mike, actually, independent of poker, he is a very successful businessman, operates some businesses that advertise on the radio station. So I didn't
know that.
Yeah, I think part of it was he spends so much money advertising on that station that they kind of just said, here, go ahead. And they gave us the time for free. So
wow, that's great.
We started doing the show, and we called it Rounders. And I think our first show we had, we wanted to make a big splash. We had an hour-long show, but of course in radio, and it's only like 40 minutes because of all the ads.
Yep.
But we had Daniel, we had Mike Saxton, and Greg Raymond.
Wow. That's a great first. Great.
Yeah, it shows you how little clue we had at the time, because one of those would have been fine for the entire show, right?
Right.
Because you've got to intro the show, we got to have topics and stuff. But it was interesting. We did it there for 3 years, I want to say, or so. I can't remember exactly. No, more than that, I think. Maybe 3 or 4 years. And then they started charging us. They wanted to charge us for the time. And actually, to go back, maybe a couple of shows in 2004, I got an email from somebody here in Vancouver who was listening to the show, and they said, you should podcast this show, and people listen to it. And I was like, what's a podcast? I Googled podcast. What is this thing? I had no idea what it was. So we asked the radio station, can we have the audio file? And we're just going to throw it out on the internet and see what happens. And we did that, and it wasn't too long before we were getting way more downloads, of the podcast than when we were in the show. And so when they came along and they wanted to charge us, I think it was $500 a week. They had just gotten the rights to the local hockey team here in Vancouver, and they were now upping everybody's how much it costs for people to buy air on the station. So they came along and said they wanted $500 for us to do this show on Sunday nights, and we said, well, screw that. Right. We'll just take this and we'll go to a studio and record it and put it up on the internet. We'll be fine. And then it became like, well, okay, where are we going to put this? Like, we're just going to throw it up on iTunes. Right. That happens. And I had been advertising, sort of. I had been sneaking around the rules at 2+2 for a while to try and drive traffic to our show by advertising the MVG. So I'd say, hey, we've got this person, and nobody cared. Nobody at 2+2 cared. We certainly got a lot of response, and I think that drove some traffic. But then somebody noticed, or Mason noticed one day in Van. And so I was in Vegas for the World Series, and so I went and had lunch with Mason, and next thing you know, the idea came that we're going to host a show at 2+2, and that was, whatever, 300.
And now 380 episodes in. So how many episodes in total do you think you've done? Like 500 plus?
Easily 500 plus. Yeah, I want to say we were over 200 at Rounders before we started 2+2. So that's
impressive.
Yeah,
it's a lot of broadcast hours for someone who was a professional poker player.
It is, yeah. If it took up a ton of time each week, it would have been hard. But I think, especially with Mike for so long, it was it was doing a show with a friend, and we naturally barb each other all the time. But so it was really easy to do with him. There wasn't a lot of, and he's so meticulous, and he's great. Like doing the show from my point of view for a long time was quite easy because I didn't have to do any of the prep. Mike would just prep the entire show, and I just for
that'd be a lot. Yeah, I've been doing all the prep, so it's definitely a lot of the prep. So I definitely know the work that goes into that.
Yeah, and now I do too. After Mike left the show, so I've been doing it for a year, and now it's definitely more work than it used to be.
Yep, definitely. So over those 500 episodes, who do you think has been your favorite person to interview, and why?
Wow, favorite person to interview. Well, it's always difficult, and I had this discussion with somebody the other day about interviewing a friend on the show, because what happens is I tend not to ask the questions that I already know the answer to,
right?
But everybody else doesn't. So I don't think they're good. And people always are bugging me, or for a long time were bugging me, get your brother on the show.
Right.
And my brother, who's got 3 World Series of Poker bracelets, Dan Idema, it's really, really difficult for me to interview my brother. First of all, for me, and second for him, because it's hard for him to take it seriously.
Right.
And it's really hard for me to do, because it's, again, for all those reasons that I just said. So taking a lot of those people out of the equation, I think, and not because they're, I didn't enjoy interviewing them, just because I think it makes the best interview. Right. I think my favorite one that I look back on was the Howard Lederer interview, I think.
Oh, really?
Right after the whole thing, the shit hit the fan there.
Oh, wow.
That's cool. We got to interview him after he did all the Lederer files, I guess it was, on Pokerstars.
Yeah, I remember listening to that one. I agreed. I thought that was a great interview. That's interesting that it's your favorite. It's your favorite interview. Yeah,
it was the most interesting to do, because there were so many facets to that whole story that we followed along that we could get to with him, and he was really, really open. I was surprised because if you think back to the letter files, it was always, I can't answer that question. I can't answer that question. Well, he answered most of the questions we had. I'd have to go back and listen. I haven't for a while, but I don't think he said no more than once or twice.
Right. Oh, so that's really cool.
And it was really long, and I think we're over 5 million downloads of that interview alone. So
wow, that's
the most response.
That's absurd. I didn't realize you guys pulled those kinds of numbers.
Yeah, we've been lucky enough to build a pretty loyal audience for a long time, and that's been one of the main reasons why we keep on doing it, is because people seem to enjoy it.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's fun. Now that, by the way, that's far and away by multiple times the what we normally get, but that one certainly got a lot of listens.
So along those same lines, as a question, what's your favorite memory as a broadcaster?
Thank you for not asking me who my least favorite interview is, by the way.
Nah, I don't want you to throw anyone under the bus or put you in an awkward situation. Even favorite person can be kind of difficult if, you have friends, but I really enjoyed the way that you answered that.
Sorry, what was the next question?
So what is your favorite memory as a broadcaster?
My favorite memory? I think my favorite memory memories were getting together with my friends each week and doing the show. We used to do the show in a studio in Vancouver, and it would be Mike, myself, and our old producer, Bunner.
Right,
and,
Bunner with Bunner.
Bunner with Bunner, yeah. And, you get to be really close, and that was most of the fun for me for doing the show each week, was getting together with these guys, and Mike and I used to have a beer or two every show, and not that I don't enjoy it now, because I do. Terrence is one of my best friends in the world, and Ross, our producer, is fantastic, and I really do enjoy doing the show now. But when I think back sort of on the entire period, those sort of, I think it was Tuesday nights when we did the show, when we got to get together and just laugh and have fun, and that was most of the show. We were just jacking around, really, more than anything, and that's what made it fun for me. That's what I think about.
That's great. That's a very heartfelt response. Thank you for that.
No problem.
So you've been doing this for almost 10 years, it looks like. Over that time period, how do you feel about the changes to date in the industry, and where do you expect the industry to go over the next 10 years?
Well, the industry matured really fast. When you think about it, juxtaposed to other industries in the world, of course, it's based on the internet. So with perfect competition, with the access that people have to just kind of switch or do, or but the industry just matured so fast, and it changes month to month. When you look at decades in other industries, so it's changed completely. I don't think I could have ever foreseen where it went. Right. I find it really, and I don't know, it might be me just getting to be, old man shaking his fist at the sky or whatever, but it seems to be really negative now, and that's sort of gets me down a little bit. I think there's a lot of sort of focus on the negativity that surrounds the industry and that kind of thing. I think that's also a product of Black Friday and things that have gone wrong, and people that have had to, get better or change careers, and so there isn't this sort of happy times for a lot of players out there. So I think drives a lot of that. Is it going to, and then we're actually at an interesting point in internet poker with respect to technology and how it affects people playing the game. We look at the HUDs that were recently banned in Party Poker and the different issues that Pokerstars has going forward about how to deal with people, refining poker to a mere numbers game and kind of getting away from the game. Like when I started playing poker online, it was very similar to playing live. It was, you don't see the person, but you don't, HUD, I don't know what a HUD is, and we're just playing poker. Well, that's gone now. That doesn't happen anymore. This is, a guy playing for a living can't play without, all the tools that he needs to play. So I think if you're going to ask me how it's going to change, I think poker has to get away from that, or else it's not going to survive. Or specifically online poker, or it's not going to survive. I really feel that something has to be done. And yeah, I know all the arguments about people are still going to be able to do this or that, whatever. But you don't make it okay to drive 100 miles an hour and everywhere you go. You're not going to catch everybody, but it's a deterrent to doing it. So I don't know. And to be honest, I'm not 100% confident that the industry can survive it. I'm not 100% sure that it can. I hope it can, and I hope people take it seriously. But I think that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I definitely see it heading that way myself. My main hope is that while I do expect things like HUDs be banned and other things like that eventually, is that I hope that Amaya doesn't change enough aspects of the game where it's a lot more casino type stuff, like spin and goes, like more and more things like that. Like if they keep pushing out things that are high rake, low edges, and then detract all the tools that professionals have to gain edges on people, I just feel as though that it just won't exist as a profession, legitimately, unless, there's some true competition in the market where, there's someone who's still offering legitimate games of poker. I still expect things like HUDs to be banned, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to be a bad thing even for myself. And I love using my HUD. It's definitely gives me a lot of added information that I use, almost every hand that I play. But that being said, I understand the arguments against having HUDs, and I think that removing them would definitely be good for the industry long term, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I just hope that poker companies don't start pushing out more gambling type poker games and less skill oriented poker games.
Yeah, and I think luckily for the players, for us players, that the interests intersect at some point.
Right, definitely.
It makes sense for the site to create an environment where people are going to play. Now, I don't know that we should have people 20 tabling, whatever, the density of pros to recreational players just becomes extreme at that point, and I think that they should probably, limit tables at some point to some, reasonable. But I think that it makes a lot of sense for the site as well to have that sort of environment that you were talking about, because so that's the good news.
Right, definitely. I agree with that. So do you see yourself staying a part of the industry over the next 10 years? And in what way do you think that might change compared to now?
10 years, not broadcasting for sure. I don't think I could continue. It's really, for 10 years I've been doing shows sort of at least every week. Well, at least every 3 or 4 times a month. It becomes difficult to go on a 2-week vacation with my family. My kids are getting older. It's sort of this thing. It's great and it's fun, and I love doing it. And but it's also something that I don't think I can do for 10 more years for sure.
Understandable.
In the industry, I think I'm probably have a lot to offer. So some people that are building sites or some sort of part of the industry. So at some point, I think I might
go more behind the scenes.
Yeah, go more behind the scenes and work sort of in that area, and then see where that takes me.
Cool, that's great. So over the last 10 years, is there anything that you wish you could have changed in broadcasting, and what would it be?
Changed in broadcasting? No, I don't think so. I don't really have any regrets from the years, from doing the show. We always just kind of wanted to do it our way, and if people liked it, great. If they didn't, that's fine too. So we just did what we want. Like it's really hard to kind of look back and go, we should have done this or we should have. I guess I probably wish I would have, maybe gone to broadcasting school and been better at it, from the start, or maybe get into doing television, maybe doing some televised poker or something. I did some of that here in Canada, but I never really kind of took it seriously or thought that it would be something I want to do. And that would be a small regret, but maybe that's about it.
That's great. That's probably why you guys were so successful, is because you legitimately enjoyed doing it. There's a fairly famous Warren Buffett saying that goes along the lines of, do what you love, and the money, the success will follow.
Yeah, I don't know if the money followed, but we certainly lasted a long time, if that's how you gauge success, I guess.
So do you have any advice that you could give myself and my co-hosts going forward with this brand new show?
Well, a lot of that, I guess, just you're going to get people that, haters, whatever, right? I wouldn't pay much attention to it. I mean, take constructive criticism when it's offered, by listeners or whatever, because that's who is listening to your show, right? And is going to spend time. And it's, our show's 3 hours a week. It's a lot to ask somebody to listen to us for 3 hours a week. So I appreciate when they do. And because time, we all know how valuable time is. So that the person who is listening to your show and wants to give you criticism on how they would like to do it, I think that's really valuable. And I would listen to that. A lot of the things we were just talking about, have fun doing what you're doing.
Right, definitely.
And just, that's what people are going to enjoy. And I listen to a ton of podcasts, and invariably the best ones aren't somebody just kind of going methodically through exactly what they'd planned out. Just goof off and have fun, and because that, and especially in our sort of genre, it's entertainment. You know what I mean? It's not.
Definitely.
We don't ever try to pretend we're gonna make you the best poker player in the world. We're trying to have fun, basically. And that's, I think, what makes good poker media, really.
Yep, definitely agreed with that. I definitely have seen like when I ask questions, those kinds of things, I'm definitely a little bit wooden, but this is honestly my first ever interview. I don't know how many people know that.
If you went back and listened to my first shows, you would just laugh your head off. So you're way ahead of where I was, and I think you're going to be fine. Yeah,
Thank you.
When it becomes quite easy, and I think you're doing what so that helps, right?
Right, definitely. Sticking to something that I know very well, and that I've listened to, I would say, every single episode 2+2, almost, maybe like 10 or so that I haven't, and then some of your older stuff as well. So you're already a guest that I have listened to for so many years. And that helps a little bit as far as how I can tailor my questions and those kinds of things, but I feel as though going forward, maybe as I get a little bit more comfortable, hopefully I don't sound quite as wooden, and hopefully I can get a little bit more relaxed on camera.
Oh, you will, for sure.
Thank you. Hopefully. Anyways, thank you very much for being the first ever guest on Heads Up with Ryan LaPlante, and best of luck with everything going forward.
Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Good luck with the show, and I want to thank you for doing the stuff that you've done for our show. For those that know, Ryan did an audio blog on some tournaments that he did, and maybe I don't know if you could probably put it onto your stream as well. Some of the stuff, because it's excellent and it was really well received. People loved it, and really appreciate you letting us broadcast that.
Yeah, no problem. I had a lot of fun making it. I plan on making more in the future. No idea as to when or what or how or anything like that, but definitely looking forward to doing some more of that stuff. So thank you once again, Adam, and I will talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Thanks. So, what'd you guys think of it?
Not bad.
Thank you. I
do some work, but I think that I think you're all right.
Yeah,
you're going places, kid.
Yeah, I know I was a little wooded on some of the questions and stuff. I did have it written down, but I mean,
super interesting, dude.
I mean, yeah, Adam's a really great guy, as you guys can see. I mean, we went pretty in depth into all the history and stuff about like his history, about the history of the industry. We covered a lot of great topics. I realized that it was a pretty long interview, but honestly, I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope that all the viewers enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
And
definitely. In the future, I think that AJ and I will also be partaking in the Heads Up series. Yep. We'll be interviewing people that we know as well.
Definitely. That's kind of the plan, is that it won't just be me, is that each of us will occasionally do various interviews with different people. Some of the people that I'd like to get on in the future might be like some PPA people, people like tournament directors, like try to get Matt Savage on, try to get a lot of like industry people on, some of the behind the scenes people, you know, some people yep, exactly, and try to get,
since we already have the pro perspective, we already have the fan perspective, we already have the reporter perspective, we want some industry perspective. We want some industry perspective.
Right, definitely.
We want some, you know, some different perspectives.
And as you could see in like this interview, is that he did have some really interesting like viewpoints, and I like honestly, so he'd mentioned in it that he'd done a couple interviews before then, but nothing really big. So this was like his first like true in-depth interview, and he had a lot of interesting stuff to say. And
it's just weird for somebody so in the public.
Right, definitely. Yeah. And like not many people would really like think about that. Like, oh, why hasn't he done something? Wouldn't he have interesting stuff to say? So yeah, that'll be our plan with it going forward, is that we get a lot of more of those type of people who haven't really had these in-depth looks into them, that people in the community know who they are and might be interested in listening to what they have to say.
Excellent.
Definitely.
And our last topic, our resident old man.
Yeah. So how old are you, by the way? I don't even know.
I'm so old.
I'm
so old. I'm celebrating the 8th anniversary of my 21st birthday.
I like that. It's a very Vegas perspective on things.
You aren't even 30 yet? Come on. No, you're still a young guy. Still a young guy.
I've been 80 since I've been 12. Well, I'm drinking gin right now. This is the oldest manest drink.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm 29. This is what I'm doing to celebrate my birthday.
Talking about poker with some nerds.
Talking poker with some folks. I don't really do things for my birthday.
Yeah.
Unless other people force me to do things, like that's just not what I'm into. But next year someone will force me. Once the decade rolls over, I'm sure that it will be a thing. But I appreciate all the notes that I've gotten from all folks that I'm friends with and have met in the past, and you know, I'm happy with where my life is at now, and you know, it's part of the journey, and I appreciate you guys being a part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't be friends if we weren't. Come on.
Yeah. We have to. The problem is we have to wait for Ryan to come back in town to go
out.
Right.
Yes.
Well,
yes. December, probably, maybe, hopefully.
December, maybe, probably, hopefully.
Well, actually, hopefully not December. Hopefully January. Because if I do well over the next couple of months doing an East Coast road trip, so December, maybe. Yeah.
January is a lifetime from now. I don't know where I'll be tomorrow.
I was going to say, I can barely schedule 48 hours in advance.
Well, I know where I'll be next week.
Yeah, where's that?
Right here.
It'll be right here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, same here, actually.
Recording another wonderful episode of The Muck.
Woohoo! The Muck.
Fine poker fanatics.
Yes. So,
poker reporters and poker professionals, not just your
and fans, yes, and grinders, and
industry
and
people,
recreationals, for everybody,
dealers, cocktail waitresses,
and people who accidentally Googled the Muck and stumbled upon this podcast.
Yes.
Waited till the end for some reason.
Okay. Speaking of which, thank you guys all for being here. We really do appreciate it. Join us next week for the next episode of The Muck, your place for all things poker industry. Thanks, guys.